Hi, I'm Pam MacKinnon, Artistic Director of American Conservatory Theater, and this is Virtually Speaking. And today I'm talking to the wonderful actor, Ken Ruta. Hi, Ken.
Hi, Pam.
And where are you right now in this black void?
Oh, I'm sitting alone across the street in an apartment building and dreaming about the past. But I'm up high and I look out the window and I'm brokenhearted to see a closed ballet theater, an opera theater, several touring houses, and dreaming of the past.
Dreaming of the past. Okay, great. I mean that we can hop right in. I mean, I'm very excited to be in conversation with you, Ken. I thought I would start by actually reading something that Bill Ball wrote in the early days of A.C.T. and a little bit his philosophy of what kind of theater he wanted A.C.T.
Yeah.
to be, because you're so much a part of A.C.T.'s history as an actor. So this is Bill Ball. There are theaters of authors, theaters of prophet, theaters of electronic engineers, theaters of critics and literateurs, theaters of proselytes, theaters of sensationalists, political shouters, other. But we are the theater of the actor. The primary and fundamental principle to which we adhere is the actor is one. The actor is the first, the only complete and perfect architect of the intuitive force which captivates and awakens. The actor is the spokesman. The actor is the revealer. The actor is the opener of the door. The actor is the embodiment of the light. The actor is the carrier of the world. The actor is the child who speaks the truth. It is he who gives our art its merit, its meaning. The actor is the champion. Other theater artists are the revealers of the actors. We present these demigods to the world. We seek to make them look resplendent. We seek to allow them to make their revelations. So I think of you after I read that. I mean, you're right? You're such a part of this theater, and in the DNA of A.C.T. is the actor and the acting company. I wonder if we could first start out just talking about when did you know you were an actor?
I don't know. It sort of, I think I wanted to write. I think the first thing I wanted to do was be a priest. This is a long, I mean, I don't know how old I was. I remember wrote a letter and someone, and they did tell me that I would have to eat boiled potatoes and raw fish, and that.
Right, forget about that.
Yeah, and anyway, but I mean, I wrote a lot, and I reviewed books for the Junior Literary Guild. I won a contest on the Chicago Tribune reading the Sunday papers, and I talked on there, and they liked me and kept me on there. But my mother got me off because all they did was pay me in baseball bats and all. And then I forgot about that, and then I fell in love with opera. And this is still when I'm a baby.
Yeah.
But I heard an opera record at the age of 10. Two of my cousins took me to the ballet and to see a musical. And when I was 11, they took me to my first opera. And oddly enough, I was still writing, but there I was, my last semester in grammar school. And the music class, the teacher said, you boys, the gals, you can leave the class. Boys, please stay here. We've been offered some jobs for boy sopranos. Do any of you boys know what that is? And I said, I do. There's some operas with boy sopranos. She said, oh, very good, very good. Would you be interested in trying out for that? Anyway, the whole thing was, that fall of 1946, I was in La Boheme, La Gioconda, Tosca, Hansel and Gretel, those 4 operas, getting paid for singing voice soprano.
Oh my goodness.
And I was, you know, I got a review even from one of the critics said, it was interesting to see one of those boys from the soprano department who were snuck on stage and was listening in on a scene.
Acting. That's what that is.
I mean, that was that thing. But you know, and then unfortunately, the voice was changing.
Right.
That opera company folded. I got in another one that folded. My voice changed. I was in a little dinky opera company at the age of 14. And a rich lady took one of the other kids in the program I made to a concert given by a wonderful man named A.C.T. And he said, what are you boys doing? What do? You can't concerts. What do you want to do? We said, we're all singers. And you're what? How old are you? What's your number? He called up my mother and chewed her out for letting me sing at the age of 14 and that stopped that whole career. And I became a writer again, writing on the school newspaper, but secretly falling in love with English movies. Vivien Leigh, Laurence Olivier.
Yep.
I went to see the same things over and over, and it sort of became interested, but I didn't know what to do with it. But there was a gang of us in our last year in high school. We started trying to sneak in theaters downtown. We threw snowballs at the Lunts one night, chic kids that we were. The only theater we went to, because we got in free, was the Goodman Theater School. And we saw Hamlet, and we saw Street Scene.
Oh, wow.
We went to Street Scene on the night of our prom. We didn't want to go to the prom. We knew where the kids were going to go later, where they wouldn't be allowed to drink. But we will be there. And we were drinking brandy Alexanders and didn't have the money, and were thrown out. And that was the beginning of I went to Northwestern for 1 quarter, hated it, and said, well, I like those things I saw at that Goodman Theater School, but they all talked so funny. I could hear them all the time. They weren't mumbling like that old lady I saw in Glass Menagerie. I snuck in to see the original one. Snuck in backstage that first year because it opened in Chicago. And
with Lynette Turner. Yeah.
No. What was that her name? What was her name? I can't remember what her name was. But that was her in that original cast. And I started there at the Goodman, but I went to the Goodman to be a director or a set designer.
Okay.
And I had to work on crew and all that, and started memorizing the plays. And pretty soon people were hearing me and saying, and I didn't know what to do as a director. And pretty soon I was doing little plays the second semester. I had 1 line in a play that was part of their subscription series, and I brought down the house every night. Who do I see about parking my car? Play called Two by Mice by Ben and whatever, and Spiewak. They were the big faussaires. And that sort of got me going then. That was
there's nothing like a full audience laugh to make you step in. I want more. Yeah.
And and working on that crew of Hay Fever, I had memorized the whole play. And then I finally, by the end of that first year, I was not doing much in the direction or the design. I had 2 very good companions, and she was a costume designer, a Greek girl who later won several Tonys. Her name was, well, she married an actor named Tom Aldridge, and then she was Theone Aldridge. And so that was someone I hung around with, and the other was a kid, was a set designer. And he was the one that heard about this place in Canada that was going to have a Shakespeare theater. Mm. And we went to Stratford, Ontario. What was the opening summer of that theater? Took buses to get there. And we all just went. So we were only going to be there for one day only because it was a matinee and evening. And we decided we had enough money to spend another night. And so we could see one of the plays again. And that performance, I sat next to this, because it then took place in a tent. The stage was built, yep, and the seating, but it was a tent. And I was in the back row, this man sitting on a stool who was this high, Tyrone Guthrie. And I was, it's God. God there. Alec Guinness was pretty good on stage, but it was the woman on stage. Her name really wasn't Irene Worth. It was Harriet Abrams. She was a Mennonite girl from Nevada. And that voice and that body. And so we went haywire, and I was determined I was going to be in that play someday. I was in that play the next year at the Goodman Theater.
Oh, amazing. Amazing, Ken.
I was in Richard III playing Buckingham at the end. And I got a summer stock job for the summer. They hired me to play Willie Loman. They never saw me. They talked to me on the phone. When they saw me, they went, "What?"
Right, you're not 50.
So what did they give me? They gave me an 80-year-old part. I played a lot of old parts that summer, but I also played Pygmalion, Henry Higgins. Mm. And my favorite teacher at the Goodman, who was then approaching 90, she was a voice and diction teacher, Mary Agnes Doyle, who that first day of class made us all swear on certain things. If we were actors, we had to swear that if we were going to become professionals, we would not read our reviews until closing nights. If we were directors, we would swear to read the review opening night. And I kept that in
This is good advice. Yeah.
It was always, well, anyway, she sent me a note at Pygmalion and said, "You must find someone to dye your hair red." He was my teacher when I was a girl, when I had to go to London to get my voice back. And who dyed it? What was the great Broadway producer who was on the Titanic? I forgot who played in the movie. And anyway, he died on that thing, but he's the one that sent her to England to study with Henry. His name was Henry Sweet, which Shaw changed to Henry Higgins. And that's how I learned to speak. Was from
let's talk a little bit about that, because I know that, and we're going to jump a little bit to San Francisco and A.C.T. But I read somewhere that there was a class that you taught as part of the conservatory at A.C.T. called Rapid Rate Utterance.
It began.
And what is that?
You know, when it first started, Bill called it the Ruta rate of utterance. And I said, "Oh, Bill, that's awful." And then it was changed to that. And he's the one that picked me to do that. But that That was 1967, the first summer training
Mhm.
program. Dr. Guthrie picked me earlier at the Guthrie out of the blue the second season. He said, Ruta, I want you to start working with the company. Teach them how to pronounce vowels and pronouns. And I was too, I mean, these great people around me, you know, Zoe Caldwell, Hume Cronin, Jessica Tandy, George Gazard, and all that. But I did that for a couple of weeks. That's how I began at that, but learned all, and that's, and I kept on at that, kept doing that. And that was, I loved it.
Yeah. And that connection between being on stage and also teaching, I mean, that was a big part of the A.C.T.
Yes.
A.C.T. Conservatory, right? And
Yes.
the repertory company and the actors teaching as well as being on stage. And
Exactly.
what are some early experiences, you know, in those sort of the heady first few seasons of A.C.T. that you still really cherish? I wonder if there are any favorite roles or any favorite moments.
I don't know where to, I mean, the first role was a role that Bill had offered me at Lincoln Center originally, but I wanted to go back to the Guthrie. But there I was playing it at the first season of A.C.T. I must say, there's an awful lot of lines. And it was the opening night. And I was the first actor on stage to forget his lines. And I ad-libbed in Alexandrines. I'll never forget Seda Thompson opened the door to come on because, you know, it's like, what the fuck is he saying?
Waiting for her cue, and knowing it's not coming.
And I got a rave review from Stanley Eichelbaum, critic, saying he was the only actor in the company who could handle dealing with Alexandrians. I made it. But it was weird. I mean, we were a mob of a company. There were no understudies.
Okay.
And we had to be ready to go, you know, the scheduling was only like 2 or 3 weeks in advance. So we had to be ready to maybe go on for something. The second show I was in was Endgame, which they had already done earlier. And fortunately, it was with a man who I owe as much to as I did to Bill and my speech teacher named Edward Payson Call, who gave me my first jobs doing Shakespeare in the state of Ohio in Arthur Lithgow's theaters. And I was there playing the old bastard blind man in the chair in Endgame. Mm-hmm. And was told by Ed, Ken, you know, we're going to have a little trouble here because thank God you're blind on this. So you just better memorize the whole line because Rene Auberjonois, who was going to play the other part, is rehearsing in another play. And he's been in this before, so he knows it. So you're going to have to memorize all that stuff by yourself. And Rene will be here by the time we go into dress rehearsal. I did it, and I never opened my eyes through the whole thing. It was a wonderful experience because the people, I was dealing as a blind man with the people I was talking, and there was the one night when there was big noise in the audience, and I thought with somebody walking out because they hated the show so much, and Renee kept on saying, no. And I kept on, you know, I'm going to keep going on end of the play. And he said, why the fuck didn't you stop? I said, why? Somebody had a heart attack in the audience. They dragged him out in the aisle, were pumping him, and you kept talking. They came in, dragged him out, and you were still talking.
Oh my word! But there you were, the blind man. So
There,
you didn't know.
that was a wonderful beginning.
Yeah.
Wonder Bill liked me. Then thank God I had been in Bill's original production of Under Milkwood.
Right. And that was in New York, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And was in that, the original company. We did a national tour, revived it. And then Barry was doing it there. We were also, there wasn't it was like almost double cast. They would do another part of A.C.T. was doing it down in LA too. So, and so I did that, and that was nice because I wasn't playing my old part, and I got to sing the first time by one of my neighbors when I first moved to New York, named Lee Hoiby, who wrote the music. The costumes were by my Greek girlfriend, Theone Aldridge. There I was wearing her clothes. And we did Under Milkwood here, took it down to LA, did it on television. We were doing those two cities all through that whole opening season.
Oh, wow.
And then the only they were doing Man and Superman, and one of the actors refused to act with another act in it. So I was asked if I would take his part, and then he would take my part. And I think it was the Seagull. And I went and did Man and Superman with the Don Juan and Hell scene in it. It was the whole
play.
And there was I playing the devil in the Don Juan and Hell. Who is that man who directed that Beatles movie? That first Beatles movie. Anyway, he saw me in it, and he thought I was an old Spanish Jew and called me in for a reading for a film. And then I said, "Who are you? You're some kid. I wanted to see that Jewish guy. Were you in that play?" I said, "I was the Jewish guy."
Right, right. Here's this lanky kid from Chicago. Yeah, yeah. And what I wonder if, I'm curious if you have, like, what is it about the Geary Theater and the Geary stage? I mean, you've done so many shows in that house, and what do you love about it?
Well, to begin with, that's where Inherit the Wind played.
Oh, wow.
And it was really in the mess of a theater. And I was with the extras, and we were in the basement, and it was really a basement with tables and filthy. And then, there seemed to be more and more theaters were closing in San Francisco, but the Geary was open all the time, and the Curran was, so they were cleaning it up a little bit. But it was Bill, when Bill was there, it was about the actors on the stage. There was very little scenery. There was also a slight rake on the stage. So you were
right. So your energy was tilted toward the audience.
You were out there for the whole. And that was the other thing about, with working with the same, well, Under Milkwood originally, we sat around the table for 3 weeks at Circle in the Square and just sat at different places at the table. We were surrounded by photographs of the town that Dylan Thomas lived in. And we, by that time, knew in what direction streets were and buildings that we talked about. And Bill wasn't pushing that. We were just doing it. And we got through the end of the third week on a Sunday. Monday morning, phone rang up. Stage manager said, "Ken, we're in trouble. Bill has come down seriously with something, and we don't know when we're going to pick up again. I said, "Oh, I have our first preview on Friday," and he hadn't staged it yet. We were just
Okay.
we all
We were
knew
still-
it then,
right.
but we hadn't staged it. And they said, "No, we'll be in touch with you and tell you what was going on, but just stay by our phone today." So I hung up. Phone rang again. David Merrick office calling. "Hi, Ken." This is what I was saying. "Hi, we were wondering if you were available these days." I said, "Well, I was sort of am." They said, "Sort of? Do you know? Are you actually doing something?" I said, "Well," it's very difficult to talk about this. I said, "Well, would you be, we know you came and read for us earlier when we were doing this play with Laurence Olivier and what was Anthony Quinn. And Olivier was going to stay, but he wanted to switch parts. And we're interested if you'd be understudying Laurence Olivier." And I said, "Well, could you, we know you've read the script. Could you get on the bus and come down and just give us, just come on down." And it was they were already rehearsing it. And I went and was just sight reading it, but Olivier wasn't there. And I read it, and I left. And I went back home, and there was the phone saying, "Ken, Bill's going to be back to work tomorrow. He is such a damn good friend of the Kennedy family, and they sent their doctor to help him." This is a guy.
Yeah, legendary. That's
crazy
Dr. Feelgood, right?
That's right.
Legendary.
And he gave Bill the shot.
Yeah.
And Bill we went into rehearsal the next day. He blocked the show the next 3 days, did our first preview on Friday, got our Tonys.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. He and the acting company physicalized what had been written as a play for voices.
Yeah.
And became huge.
It was wonderful. And I was blessed because my love in the show was Theda Thompson. And we had.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
And I heard about this. We were getting near the summer. I was going to go away to Arthur Lithgow again and play Shakespeare. Mm-hmm. And I remember I was leaving the theater one night, and whoever the head usher was, she said, "Your girlfriend was here again, because she'd been telling you of a girlfriend who comes to watch you at the end of the first act. She just comes in, knows exactly when to come in, and just to hear you do the end of the first act. She was here again. She's nuts, but she's, Geraldine Page."
That's wonderful.
I didn't want to know who it was. I was out of it. But that was but I already knew her she lived near the Circle on the Square, so she'd come by and all that. But I've been many adventures with her, good ones.
Yeah.
But that whole first season of A.C.T. was brilliant by everyone working at the top of we didn't know there were really understudies. They were going to some secret training congress that wasn't being paid. I found that out later. So we never had people missing anything.
Yeah.
And then there was because we didn't know we were going to stay here. We were supposed to go to Chicago.
Right.
It was supposed to be half and half. And Bill knew more about things than other things. So we had to do something to make the audience demand us. Our last day was a Saturday. Bill called a 9 o'clock rehearsal to do the curtain call. Bill said, you're all going to have to watch the balcony lights for the cues for this, and watch the beating to give you the rhythms for this, because you've got movement, not only your bodies, but your arms and legs and heads. And of course, you're going to find out that all of you will be switching your costumes a lot just to fit this all in the final curtain call, which, I mean, and we worked from 9 till 12. We did not know the music. The music was the Firebird finale. And it was exactly as Bill did. There was only one thing at the end. He told us, make sure you watch that red light at the end, because we were all by that in the costumes for the opening show, Tartuffe. So it's all the gals were in, and the guys were in big hats.
So Ken, was this like a curtain call for the final, like for the like the totality of the season?
It was as many of the shows as we could.
Got you. And so the curtain call, you had
all-
costume changes within the curtain
No,
call
got
to
off stage.
represent Tartuffe and to
Yeah.
represent another show. And I see.
And this was to end with Tartuffe, because
Yep.
that was the big classy one.
Yep.
And you know, we had and that light came, we had to lift our hats, and the light went out. The men are supposed to throw their hats in the audience, and the ladies sink to the ground. And use your cane, go and pick them up, and said, those in the back, you run out, stage door, stand out there by the stage door, you in the front row, hesitate and get those hats back from everyone, because that audience is going to come around to the side and all that and beg us to come back. Which they did, because Chicago didn't want us.
And Chicago didn't want American
They wanted to
Conservatory
know
Theater.
who the stars were.
Yeah.
And little did they know who were going to be stars like the next year of so many, you know, Seda Thompson and all those. And Renee Bergerac went
Right.
immediately and all that.
Right. And Peter Donat. Yeah.
Well, Peter came later. He became the next season. But that was that. We finished that season, and we knew we might do we were going to do Crucible and Thieves Carnival and something else, and we would be doing it at Stanford in their summer season. And then we would also be going to Ravinia Park in Chicago and doing it, part of their concert series, which was heaven. And more money. And that's what we did that summer. And then the good news finally came. We will be staying in San Francisco.
In San Francisco. And did you have any hesitation as someone who grew up in Chicago what was San Francisco for you at that point?
Well, I think we all wanted to stay here. We all loved it. We were having and the thing about during that crazy season of doing all those shows, Bill used to have guests coming in during we worked 8 hours a day. You know, if we weren't in one show or another, we were teaching or going to a class. And we had, I remember we had comedy lessons with Edward Everett Horton, that old ham movie star. We had Shakespeare lessons from Margaret Webster on how to deal with things online. I mean, Bill kept that up for the first couple of years. We always had guests coming in to teach us things. And we were all supposed to take notes and all, because Bill would ask us and remember them. That was good to pass those things on to one another. But that we knew Bill had made certain choices, not big choices. There was one actor in that first year company who was someone I went to drama school with, who was the year after me. who was probably the most brilliant actor I knew at the Goodman Theater School. And he went immediately to Broadway. I don't know, was in a musical, extremely brilliant actor, not a pretty human being, but a dazzling actor. His name was Michael O'Sullivan. And he was, couldn't decide what he was going to do because he loved plays and all, but I think he decided he would stay for a little longer. So Bill picked things out from that year, but but he didn't want to, Bill wanted to open with 12th Night. And he didn't want to be in 12th Night because he didn't want to be with a certain other actor who shall remain nameless, who didn't come back anyway that season. So I got one of those parts.
Well, didn't you played Malvolio in that, right?
Yeah.
And didn't you play Malvolio a few times?
I played, originally it was supposed to be 3 companies doing it. Bill was going to have the kids in the training program going on gradually, and they couldn't do it. They were learning all these other parts. So it was really basically, there were a few changes. Unfortunately, one of the young guys in the show had a heart attack. But we had a few changes, and another one of my goddesses, great opera singer, great musical, Miss Ruth Cobart, fantastic talent, a voice. I mean, she'd been in so many operas and everything, but she wanted to be on the stage. And she then joined that cast, replacing somebody else. And we did 12th Night throughout the whole season. We added Crucible, went in there. The awful production we did at Stanford and Ravinia was The Thieves' Carnival, which was really bad. And it was redesigned, and Jerry Kilty redirected it. And then we had Miss Michael Learned was in there coming with her husband, Peter Donat. And Peter, they rarely ever acted together. I was Michael's leading man because somebody had to be home to watch the kids. So that's
right. Logistics, of course. Yeah.
But that second season was really pretty wonderful, and there was again a new cast there for. So yeah, we forget them for a Dylan Thomas play, and I remember I got a call a couple of days when we were doing a rehearsal and saying, Ken, would you mind flying into New York? It was a friend of mine who was had been working for APA and the Phoenix Theater and all, and he was and he said, I don't know exactly which company I'm dealing with, but he said, I'm involved with another production. And we'll send you the ticket. Could you come in on the red eye and we'll meet you at the airport, New York. We'll meet you at the limousine and just come in and talk, because you can talk to this guy and our producer. And, you can go to your apartment in New York, and then we'll have the ticket for you. So you'll be back in time for your show the day after. And all that. Well, I did it. And they were sitting in the limousine with booze and some little sandwiches. Was Harold Pinter. And he hadn't done Birthday Party yet in New York, but he was already, he had another show. What was it? 2 words. The
Caretaker?
No, it was a bigger cast.
Okay.
Anyway, it was on Broadway with an all English cast, which was being picketed by American actors. And Peter just talked to me, and he told me about this, how he wrote the play and the hotel he lived in and all that. And he said, well, come on, let's have some more to eat. And he said, I have a big favor to ask of you. Our producer will call you tomorrow. Don't worry about it. Would you come with me to the rehearsal and sit with me? We're only going to run through the replacements during the first act, but I've got to walk through that crowd of American actors.
Oh my goodness.
Which I did for him. And I got the plane home, got the special delivery letter, offered a part, but not the part I wanted.
And you still hold a grudge.
But was offered to me. But besides that day, getting that special delivery letter, Bill Ball left a message, Kenny, I want to talk to you. He says, I'm going to try Hamlet again. He said, I want you to play Claudius, so think about it. But think about it. He said, I'm not sure when exactly it is. And then I got a call from Jerome Kilty. He said, Kenny, I have a secret text here. And I've been in Russia a lot, and I've done this new translation of a play about the life of the last days of Chekhov. And I want you to play Chekhov.
Oh, wow. Wow. It just, I mean,
that had me.
Yes.
I said no to Hamlet. I told my friends, I said, no, I really wanted to play the other part.
Yeah.
And I played Chekhov.
Do you have a favorite genre?
No, because I was always being, I'll never forget one of the reasons I took the job at A.C.T. because I'd been there at the Guthrie 4 years playing old parts all the time. And I was going back for the fourth year. Guthrie also he didn't believe people should stay in the company no more than 4 seasons, but then come back.
Okay.
But they shouldn't spend any, you get into bad habits and all.
Yeah.
So
no, that makes sense.
It's up to you to decide that thing. And so, I didn't know, I knew what I was going to play that 4th season, some nice parts. And I was about to leave for rehearsals at the Guthrie when I saw what was opening out of town in New Haven, which was Ivanov with John Gielgud and another one of my later friends, Miss Vivien Leigh.
So going back to those early childhood movie watching
days. I was in a
days.
show with her on Broadway.
Wow.
And I set up because she was so good to me. I mean, I was treated, she was an angel to me. And I said, I'm going to go to New Haven, and I got to be the first preview of Ivanov. And I went, and she was divine and beautiful. And I remember I went backstage afterwards and knocked on the door. The door opened, and the woman at the door said, "Oh my God, it's Ken, it's Ken." It was Jessica Tandy's dresser from the Guthrie. And then I heard in the background, "Ken, is it Ken Ruta? Tell him to come in here." She said, "What are you doing going back to the Guthrie? I know what you're playing. You are too young and wasting your life playing those old parts. You play young leading men. Please don't be an idiot." And that sort of got me going on that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that poor lady died that following spring. In rehearsal, with a delicate balance in London. But she was so good to me. I mean, those Brits were so good to us.
Mm.
But those,
yeah, I assisted. I was assistant director on a production of Moon for the Misbegotten on
yeah,
Broadway that Dan Sullivan
yeah,
directed, and Roy Dotrice was in it.
yeah,
He played Phil Hogan, and he had been in the he was like a junior company member when Olivier was still at the RSC, and
yeah.
all that. And he won a Tony Award for that role. As Phil Hogan in Moon for the Misbegotten. And he was asked by some US press, a little bit of a snotty
Yeah.
kind of question of like, why do the Americans give all these awards to Brits? And is it because Brits are better actors? And Roy turned it around and said, I think it's just because the Americans are so generous.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe. I mean, that was, I mean, one of the things I remember about Vivien Leigh in that show, the London cast, the Geary play, Duel of Angels, gorgeous to look at. And the one who did in London wasn't touring with it, and I forgot who the producer was in New York. And they hired this young, new darling, Mary Ure, who'd been in a couple movies. It wasn't a marriage made in heaven. As I remember at the first reading, Mary Ure had never read the play before.
Mm.
Vivien didn't say a word and just smiled and said, I'd like to speak to you afterwards and all that. I mean, there was so much other politicking going on because there was another role in the play that Vivien didn't want it to be played in its full part because it was too brilliant, and it came in at the end of the play. So they didn't hire that great star. She was Ferenc Molnar's wife. Blanche Yorka, her name was, and greatly, she was out of it. So it was a lesser actor. But then there was another small, nice part that had to act with Vivien. And this woman also wrote scripts. And she knew that she was going to be writing the script for Cleopatra with those people about to do it in LA. So Vivien said, I don't know what to do because I already had a part in that play and they're already hiring somebody new. She's not going to hire me. I'm too old to be playing that part. So she was fired. I mean, I couldn't believe all those. It was wonderful. And it was all playing for the English. And we were taking all that seriously.
Right.
All the time. But I mean, things about, we played out of town in New Haven. I know Vivien called a rehearsal for Mary Ure again when we got back because we had 2 previews in New York and worked with her. And then I was called in for one, and I had a very short scene with her. But I went for it, and then Vivien lay into her for fucking up all of Ken's laughs.
Well, the laughs are big. The laughs are hugely important. This is another Roy Dotrice story. He always told me that the first read of a play for him, so actors around the table, but this is the first time the company's reading it, he would mark all his laughs. Like that for him was like those were the stepping stones through a play.
Yeah, exactly.
And and that's and I understand that completely, and it's and it's also in that first table read that is the closest you're ever going to have that like initial response, which
Yeah,
is the
exactly.
old,
Right.
which is the closest to what an audience will have as well.
Yeah.
And so mark your laughs. And then
Yeah.
through the rehearsal process, you will lose your laughs. It won't be funny for a long time, but go back to those little check marks
Yeah.
when you start to reintroduce it to an audience.
And that's there's Vivien there.
Yeah.
But it was so she was a treat being with her, and it broke my heart too, because when we had understudy rehearsal was Saturday mornings at the Helen Hayes, and one Saturday morning couldn't get near the theater. The press was out because there was, the headline was Olivia asked for divorce. And the terrifying thing was Vivien never got the papers because she was not staying at her hotel. She was taking care of Rita Hayworth, who was very sick, and she was living with her. So all the papers for the divorce.
Oh my word.
So she came in to play the matinee and found out from the press. She played like $1 million. She was something.
Wow.
And
Oh,
that
Ken,
little
these.
maid of hers one day twisted her ankle, and I got the note saying, "Would you be terribly embarrassed if I asked you to carry me in the first act?"
Oh.
Because she had this huge costume. She said, "Just in the first act, you know I'm with you fine in the second act. Would you carry me to the entrance and pick me up?" So I did that and all that. I did it twice, and I got 2 cases of Dewar Scotch.
Oh, very sweet. Oh my word.
She was, I mean, it was,
oh,
that was a honey. She was an incredible, kind, good woman.
oh,
But
that's
to go
beautiful.
through that whole thing, Olivia was such a, well, it was a big, very big shock. She called for her mother, flew in from Australia. And the thing is, everyone in the company, she was always showing Olivia movies, and we all wanted to see Vivien's movies. And she finally agreed to Gone with the Wind. And that's what she was showing that day. And she just sat there because she was so out of it.
Yeah.
And she just sat there and sobbed. But it was.
I'm gonna change the subject a little bit.
Yeah, why not? I'm blabbing so much.
Do you have any advice for younger actors stepping into this field right now?
I think listening is so important. One of the, and in order, and part of listening, the other end, you better damn well have very good speech too. I mean, the days when I began, there was no such thing as mics.
It's mics, yeah, yeah.
And that was, I still remember going to my first, what's her name? Oh, God, oh, the great, who was the big belter on Broadway musicals?
Well, there's Ethel Merman.
Ethel Merman. Ethel Merman's son was a stage manager at A.C.T. And Ethel Merman was in a show with Fernando Lamas, who was wearing a mic. And she, he'd come out and come close to her, and she would put that hand on and let everybody know that this was her voice speaking. And then but it was that same thing. And Ethel Merman, came to A.C.T's first season. We did a benefit. We did a capsule version of The Most Happy Fella because most of us had learned the songs because the man who was in that on Broadway, Robert Weedy, was our voice teacher. And the company did that with Bob Weedy, the first half. Second half was Merman's first return to the stage in almost 2 years. And she sang without a mic and sang for about an hour and a half and took us across the street from the Geary and took us all out for coffee and all that afterwards.
Wow.
But that thing about it, you could understand
every
lyric too.
Yeah.
And that was one of the things that Bill was after all the time too. That was part of that rake too, knowing that tilt. And Guthrie the same. When Guthrie sat in the theater, at the Guthrie Theater, he did not sit center. He sat in the worst seats in the house. So he could hear and understand every word. But I think it's that other thing, besides blabbing, you've got to be able to listen to. I can tell you, I can tell you another legend.
Okay, last one. This is it.
This is about the Lunts. I did doing summer stock and got whoever designed that last show they did. What was it called? Anyway, the Duran Mutt show they did. And anyway, the designer had seen a couple of shows and said, you ought to be reading for the road company of this. I think Alfred would really like you. And he said, I'm driving back into New York tonight. Tomorrow's our day off here. Shall they say you might meet him tomorrow for coffee and all that? Which I did, and I talked to, just sat and talked to him and talked to him. And we talked about the play. I said I'd already seen it a couple of times and I loved it. And then he said, how old are you? And I said, I'm the same age as this character. He's 26. He said, would you flip another page and see how old I am? He said, I am not 46. I'm past 66. You're a child. Thank you, but I'll remember you. And he remembered me about 2 years later and called me in to read for something. And it was one of those things. I was working with the Phoenix. We were going on tour with Hamlet, and we were going to catch the train that afternoon. And I got that call and I said, well, could you just come in because you guys will be, you don't start that for a month or so. Please come in and just come and read for this. I said, well, I've just got to come in, leave your stuff here and we'll get a cab and take you there. And, and I didn't, they just gave me that text and they said, well, you better go out there. And I read it. And it was that stage manager, I sight and read because he went back and mumbled. He said, just wait a minute. And he was in the background there, and the stage manager went in the background. They were all, blah, blah, blah. And then Lunt comes over. He said, is it true you'd never read this before? I said, well, he said, how do you do that? I said, well, I listened to what you said, and then I read the answer. I listened.
That's great, Ken.
And it was wonderful because at the back of the house was Lynn saying, he's a smart one. I didn't get the job.
That's okay. You got the praise and you took it with you.
But it was that thing about, and that was so many wonderful people that day I registered for the Goodman Theater School was the opening night downtown Chicago of the road company of Member of the Wedding. That wonderful Carson McCullers Glory. And I said, oh, I love that book so much. I want to go see it. And oh, well, the only one it was all the road company cast except for Miss Ethel Waters playing that maid. And she reduced me to, I didn't leave intermissions. I couldn't believe what I was part of, that I was part of her. And I couldn't take my eyes off her, doing everything she did with everything meant, and she listened.
Right.
It was listening.
Right.
And I lived pretty far out in Chicago. I got home later because we registered that day at the Goodman. We didn't start classes till, so I wrote Ethel Waters a fan letter. And I wrote fan letters to Ethel Waters for the next 6 years. I never met her. She answered all of my letters and prayed for me. And I kept on playing with my name. Am I going to be Kenneth, Ken, Kenneth, Kenneth? And she would, and it was my first official day in New York. I'd been to Equity and found an apartment and all that, and walked some friends to the theater. And I thought I'd stop for a cup of coffee on 57th Street. And it was, maybe 8 o'clock or so. There was nobody in there except sitting in the back booth was Ethel Waters. And I didn't know what to do. And I was sitting at the counter. I drank my coffee, and I didn't know what to do. And I called the waitress and I said, I want to play that lady's bill for her.
Oh, wonderful.
And she just said, why the hell you want to do that? She's got my, I said, please, it's something I owe her, and I did that stuff. And then I was sneaking out. I was at the door, went from the back of the place. He was, hold on, where the hell do you think you're going? And then I didn't know what the hell I was going to do. She said, what is this? What is this, paying the bill? I said, I just wanted to thank you for all those years of letters and prayers. She had no clue I was a white boy.
Well, that's an amazing story, Ken. That's an amazing story.
She just looked at me and she just said, Kenneth, is that you?
Oh.
And we just stood there and cried. I didn't, and what did I do? I mean, she gave me your phone number, and but I mean, it was such an immense gift.
And that's, oh, thank you, Ken. This hour has gone by really quickly. We're at the end of it. Thank you.
Thank you for asking me.
Yeah, no, the stories could continue. Yeah, no, this is fantastic. This has been such a treat. So this has been my conversation with Ken Ruta. Thank you. I can't wait to see you in person and not through a computer screen, and that day's coming.
I live in hope.
Yep.
I live in hope. I live in hope. Any little, I can say, dinner is served.
Very nice. Very nice.
I think I've already said that. And I thought I did play a butler in something.
I'm sure you did. Okay. Thank you. Thanks.